I had maybe 3 minutes before the champagne toast that would become his execution. The private lounge of Aurora Club smelled like imported leather and secrets, the kind of place where Seoul's untouchables conducted business over aged whiskey while the rest of us kept our eyes down and our mouths shut. I'd been refilling water glasses for 6 months, perfecting the art of invisibility. Waitresses like me weren't supposed to see anything. We definitely weren't supposed to hear the woman in the Valentino dress casually discussing murder terms with 2 men whose faces belonged on Interpol watch lists. But I did. The payment transfers the moment Lee Hyun-woo's body is confirmed, Yuna Park said, her voice smooth as silk over steel. My people inside his security detail will ensure the back exits are compromised. When he tries to leave through the kitchen after dinner, your team will be waiting. My hand trembled, nearly dropping the crystal decanter I was holding. Through the gauzy curtains separating the alcoves, I could see her perfectly. Hyun-woo's fiancée, the woman whose engagement had been plastered across every society page in Seoul, calmly orchestrating his death. The men with her nodded, discussing entry points and body disposal like they were planning a corporate merger. Every cell in my body screamed at me to walk away, to pretend I'd heard nothing. I was nobody, a waitress drowning in student loans, working double shifts to keep my sister's medical bills paid. Getting involved in the business of men like Lee Hyun-woo was a death sentence for people like me. But I'd watched my own father bleed out 3 years ago because someone he trusted had betrayed him to his rivals. I'd held his hand as the light left his eyes, haunted by the fact that if someone, anyone, had warned him, he might have lived. That memory had carved itself into my bones, a scar that never quite healed. I looked across the main dining room to table 7, where Lee Hyun-woo sat reviewing contracts, completely unaware that his fiancée had just signed his death warrant. The dim lighting caught the sharp angles of his face, handsome in that dangerous way that made smart girls look twice before running. Everyone knew who he was. Lee Hyun-woo, the man who'd inherited his father's empire at 23 and expanded it into something that made politicians nervous and CEOs compliant. They said he was ruthless, that he'd built his reputation on the bodies of those who'd underestimated him. But they also said he valued loyalty above everything else, that he'd once burned down an entire rival operation because they'd targeted one of his people's families. The reservation list showed his dinner party would end at 10 p.m. It was 9:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the kitchen became an execution chamber. My manager's voice crackled through my earpiece. Serena, table 7 needs their check. This was it. The choice that would either save a monster or damn me to irrelevance. My sister's face flashed through my mind. Young, hopeful, waiting for the experimental treatment that my wages barely covered. Getting involved meant risking everything. Walking away meant living with another man's blood on my conscience. I grabbed a pen and the leather check presenter, my hand steadier than I had any right to be. Inside, I wrote 7 words that would change both our lives forever. Your fiancé betrayed you. Ambush at 10 o'clock. If you value the hard work behind these stories, hitting that subscribe button would mean so much to me. Also, before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's continue. The opening plunges readers directly into Serena's impossible dilemma as she stands in the Aurora Club's private lounge area, hidden behind a decorative screen, listening to Lee Hyun-woo's fiancé methodically plan his execution. The prose should capture the suffocating luxury of the environment, the scent of imported leather mixing with fierce sweat, the way crystal chandeliers cast fragmented light across marble floors, the low murmur of Korea's elite conducting business that would never appear in any ledger. Serena's internal monologue reveals her character through sensory details and memory. She notices everything a trained observer would miss. The way Yuna's left hand trembles slightly despite her composed voice, suggesting this betrayal costs her something. The bodyguards positioned at strategic angles throughout the restaurant. The fact that Hyun-woo's own security chief keeps glancing at his phone, likely coordinating with the conspirators. These observations establish Serena's natural intelligence and empathetic awareness, qualities that will become crucial to her survival. The narrative should weave in Serena's backstory organically through her fear response. As her hands shake while holding the water decanter, she remembers her father's funeral, how she'd learned afterward that his business partner had sold him out to a rival gang, how that partner had attended the funeral with crocodile tears, how Serena had stood silent beside the casket knowing the truth, but too afraid to speak. This pattern of traumatic silence created a wound in her psyche that this moment finally forces her to confront. The lesson embedded here, that inaction in the face of injustice is itself a choice with consequences, drives her decision without being explicitly stated. When Serena makes the choice to write the warning note, the prose should slow down to capture every sensation. The weight of the pen in her hand, the way her heart pounds so loudly she's certain everyone can hear it, the permanent ink bleeding into expensive paper like a verdict. She approaches table 7 with the check presenter, her training as a waitress allowing her to maintain perfect composure even as her internal world collapses into chaos. The moment Hyun-woo reads the note, everything changes. His eyes, previously bored, scanning through routine contracts, sharpen with predatory focus. He looks at Serena directly for the first time, and she sees what everyone whispers about. The intelligence behind the violence, the calculating mind that has kept him alive in a world designed to consume men like him. He doesn't panic. Instead, he calmly signs the check, adds a tip that would cover Serena's rent for 3 months, and writes a single word beneath her warning. When? Serena's response, 10 minutes, seals their pact. What follows is controlled chaos. Hyun-woo signals his 2 legitimate bodyguards with a gesture so subtle Serena almost misses it. He excuses himself from the table, moving toward the main entrance rather than the kitchen where the ambush waits. But Yuna notices. Her perfect composure cracks for just an instant, long enough for her to grab her phone and send a message that will redirect the killers. Serena realizes with dawning horror that saving Hyun-woo once isn't enough. The conspiracy adapts in real time. She makes a split-second decision that reveals her transformation is already beginning. Rather than retreating to the safety of the kitchen, she intercepts Hyun-woo near the coat check and whispers urgently about the trap at the front entrance as well. His response is immediate. He pulls her with him toward the service elevator, the one route the conspirators haven't anticipated because it requires staff access codes. The act culminates in violence Serena has only seen in nightmares. As they reach the elevator, gunfire erupts from both directions. Yuna's people have triggered the ambush prematurely, willing to risk civilian casualties to guarantee their target's death. Hyun-woo's training takes over, his body shielding Serena's as bullets shatter the restaurant's elegant facade. She sees the head of security, the man who'd been glancing at his phone, take aim at Hyun-woo's back, and she does something that surprises even herself. She throws her serving tray at him, disrupting his shot long enough for one of Hyun-woo's loyal guards to neutralize him. In that moment, covered in other people's blood, surrounded by screaming patrons and the acrid smell of gunpowder, Serena learns a truth that will haunt and empower her. She is capable of violence when necessary, and that capacity doesn't make her a monster, it makes her a survivor. The act ends as they escape into Hyun-woo's armored vehicle, leaving behind a restaurant transformed from sanctuary into crime scene, with Serena crossing a threshold she can never uncross. Serena's disorientation as she's transported to Hyun-woo's private compound, a fortress disguised as a luxury penthouse in Gangnam. The contrast between her tiny studio apartment and this sprawling space reinforces the gulf between their worlds. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook Seoul's glittering skyline, but the glass is bulletproof and armed guards patrol every entrance. Beauty and danger coexist here, just as they do in The Man Who Owns It. Hyun-woo doesn't treat Serena as a prisoner, but she isn't free either. He explains with clinical precision that the conspiracy against him runs deeper than one vengeful fiancé. There are factions within his own organization who see his recent moves toward legitimate business as weakness, rivals who smell blood in the water, and international players who would profit from Seoul's underworld falling into chaos. Serena's intervention has marked her as an asset to him and a liability to everyone else. Her life, as she knew it, ended the moment she wrote that note. This section explores the psychological complexity of their forced proximity. Hyun-woo is neither the romantic hero nor the one-dimensional villain that media portrayals suggest. He's a man shaped by violence, yes, but also by betrayal, raised by a father who valued power over people, inheriting an empire built on fear rather than loyalty. His conversation with Serena reveals his internal contradiction. He craves the genuine loyalty that his position makes almost impossible to verify, yet he's constructed his entire life in ways that make authentic connection nearly impossible. Serena spends her first days in the compound trying to maintain her sense of self. She calls her sister from a secured phone line, lying about why she can't visit, arranging for continued payment of medical bills through Hyun-woo's resources. a debt that terrifies her because she knows every favor in this world carries a price. She also begins observing the operation around her with the same attention to detail that helped her survive as a waitress. She notices the hierarchy among Hyun-woo's people, identifies who holds genuine loyalty versus who maintains it through fear, and starts to understand the intricate web of obligations and threats that holds his empire together. The act's central crisis arrives when Serena discovers that her sister's hospital has been infiltrated. Someone accessed her sister's medical records and installed tracking software on her phone, using the girl as bait to pinpoint Serena's location. The realization hits with devastating force. Her attempt to protect her sister by keeping her in the dark has instead made her vulnerable. Hyun-woo's people intercept an assassination team en route to the hospital, preventing catastrophe by minutes. This violation catalyzes Serena's transformation from passive protectee to active participant. She demands to be included in the planning sessions, arguing that her outsider perspective might catch details that career criminals overlook. To everyone's surprise, Hyun-woo agrees, not out of sentiment, but because her observation about the hospital security flaw proves she thinks differently than his trained operatives. The lesson woven through this act centers on the nature of power and protection. Serena learns that her default strategy, making herself small, invisible, unthreatening, doesn't work in a world where invisibility is impossible. She cannot protect her sister by being powerless. She can only protect her by becoming powerful enough to guarantee her safety. This realization is painful because it requires abandoning the comfortable fiction that she can return to her old life. The cage isn't just physical. It's the recognition that her identity as just a waitress is gone, replaced by something she's still discovering. The act builds toward an unexpected alliance. After Serena successfully predicts where the next attack will come from, using her understanding of service worker routines to identify which cleaning staff member has been compromised, Hyun-woo makes her a proposition. Stay not as a protected witness, but as a strategic consultant. He needs someone who sees the world differently, who understands the infrastructure of service and support that his organization depends on but rarely scrutinizes. Her compensation will include her sister's full medical treatment, relocation to a secure facility, and resources to complete her nursing degree. The act concludes with Serena's acceptance, delivered not with enthusiasm, but with grim determination. She looks at Hyun-woo and says, "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because they involved my sister." His response, "Good. Loyalty driven by love is more reliable than loyalty driven by fear," reveals the philosophical chasm he's trying to cross, and Serena realizes she's not just helping him survive a coup. She's potentially helping him transform the very nature of his empire, though whether that transformation is possible remains terrifyingly uncertain. Serena's deliberate transformation from civilian to someone who can survive in Hyun-woo's world. This isn't a training montage, but a psychological evolution, learning not just how to handle weapons and identify threats, but how to navigate the moral complexity of organized crime without losing herself entirely. Hyun-woo assigns Jin-ho, his most trusted operative, to teach Serena practical skills. Jin-ho is initially skeptical, viewing her as a liability rather than an asset. But Serena's determination surprises him. She doesn't train like someone playing at danger. She trains like someone who understands that hesitation equals death. Her motivation isn't abstract. It's her sister's face, the memory of her father's betrayal, the knowledge that softness in this world gets the people you love killed. The training sequences reveal character, rather than just developing skills. When learning hand-to-hand combat, Serena struggles not with the physical demands, but with the psychological requirement to hurt another person deliberately. Jin-ho teaches her that violence in self-defense isn't cruelty, it's clarity. The lesson embedded here, never explicitly stated, addresses the false dichotomy between gentleness and strength. Serena learns that protecting the vulnerable sometimes requires becoming dangerous, and that this capacity doesn't corrupt her empathy. It becomes its expression. Simultaneously, Serena begins working with Hyun-woo's intelligence team, analyzing the conspiracy's structure. She discovers that Yuna's betrayal was motivated not by greed but by coercion. The Costa family, Italian mafia with operations throughout Asia, kidnapped her younger brother and forced her cooperation. This revelation complicates Serena's understanding of villainy. Yuna isn't simply a treacherous fiancée. She's another woman trying to protect family, making impossible choices in an impossible situation. The recognition creates an unexpected symmetry between them, and Serena begins to see how easily victim and perpetrator can become indistinguishable in the underworld's moral wilderness. The act's emotional center develops through late-night conversations between Serena and Hyun-woo. Their relationship defies simple categorization. Not quite romance, not quite partnership, something stranger and more complicated. He tells her about inheriting his father's empire at 23, about the first time he had to order someone's death, about the isolation of never trusting anyone completely. She tells him about holding her father as he died, about the guilt of silence, about the terror of loving someone in a world designed to weaponize that love. These conversations reveal Hyun-woo's core wound. His father trained him to value power over people, but his soul yearns for genuine connection. Every relationship in his life has been transactional. Everyone who claims loyalty might be calculating when to betray him. Serena represents something he's never encountered. Someone whose loyalty isn't purchased or coerced, but freely given because she values truth over safety. Her presence forces him to confront whether the empire he's built can accommodate authentic human connection, or whether his position makes such connection forever impossible. The act's crisis arrives when Hyun-woo's intelligence network uncovers the conspiracy's final phase. A high-profile charity gala where Yuna plans to publicly announce her engagement to Song Jae-sung, one of Hyun-woo's lieutenants and secret rival. The wedding will consolidate power among the factions that want Hyun-woo dead, uniting Italian, Russian, and domestic Korean interests against him. Hyun-woo's empire will be dismantled and distributed, his people will be absorbed or eliminated, and Serena's sister will become unnecessary collateral, a loose end that might talk. Serena makes the proposal that defines her transformation. They don't hide from the gala, they infiltrate it. She argues that everyone expects Hyun-woo either dead or in hiding, which means they won't anticipate his appearance at Seoul's most public event. She volunteers to attend as a guest using forged credentials, providing inside intelligence while Hyun-woo positions his loyal forces around the venue. It's a massive risk. If they're discovered prematurely, they'll be isolated in hostile territory with no reinforcements. Hyun-woo's agreement comes with a condition. If the plan fails, if capture becomes imminent, Serena must escape rather than trying to save him. He makes her promise this, not because he doubts her courage, but because he's discovered something that terrifies him more than death. The possibility that someone exists who would sacrifice themselves for him not out of obligation but out of care. The act concludes with Serena standing before a mirror in an evening gown that costs more than her annual salary, preparing to walk into an environment where one wrong word or gesture could mean execution. But she doesn't see a frightened waitress anymore. She sees someone who has learned that courage isn't fearlessness, but the choice to act despite fear. That protecting what you love sometimes requires becoming what you fear, and that transformation, true transformation, means accepting you can never return to who you were before the crucible changed you. The charity gala unfolds in the Grand Hyatt's Crystal Ballroom, a space designed to showcase Seoul's elite at their most magnificent. 600 guests in designer formal wear, ice sculptures depicting charitable themes, champagne flowing like water, the perfect camouflage for a coup. Serena enters on the arm of Juna Seo, one of Hyun-woo's most trusted guards disguised as a minor businessman, and she feels the weight of every eye in the room potentially being an enemy's. The opening section of this act should capture the psychological thriller element of the evening. Serena navigating conversations with people who might recognize her from the restaurant, maintaining her cover story. She's the American-educated daughter of a shipping executive, in Seoul for business meetings, while simultaneously identifying security weak points and confirming the conspiracy's key players. Every interaction carries double meaning. When an older gentleman asks about her family business, is he making polite conversation or testing whether she's genuine? Serena spots Yuna across the ballroom, radiant in a wedding-appropriate white gown, accepting congratulations on her engagement with perfect grace. Their eyes meet for just an instant, and Serena sees something unexpected in Yuna's expression. Not triumph, but resignation. It's the face of someone who has sacrificed everything she loved for something she values more, her brother's life. The moment crystallizes Serena's understanding that in this world, there are no simple villains, only people making devastating calculations about whose lives matter most. The act's tension escalates as Serena identifies the various factions in attendance. The Costa family representatives occupy a prominent table, their relaxed demeanor suggesting they believe victory is assured. Song Jae-sung works the room with political skill, building coalitions that will support him once Hyun-woo's absence becomes permanent. The Russian delegation maintains careful neutrality, waiting to see which side emerges dominant before committing resources. Every faction has brought security, which means the ballroom is a powder keg waiting for a spark. Serena's mission is intelligence gathering, but she recognizes an opportunity for something more impactful. She excuses herself to the restroom and uses the secure phone Hyun-woo provided to communicate a revised plan. Rather than physical confrontation, they expose the conspiracy publicly, using the gala's own media coverage as a weapon. She's noticed that the event is being live-streamed for donors worldwide, complete with multiple camera feeds and a production team managing the broadcast. If they can access those systems, they can present evidence of the betrayal to everyone simultaneously, eliminating the conspirators' ability to control the narrative afterward. Hyun-woo's response is immediate approval, recognizing the elegance of using his enemy's vanity against them. While Serena returns to the ballroom, his team infiltrates the production booth, preparing to hijack the broadcast at the critical moment. The plan requires precise timing. They must wait until all the key conspirators are visible in frame, until their sense of security makes them careless, until the perfect moment to strike. The act's emotional turning point comes when Serena encounters Song Jae-sung directly. He asks her to dance, a seemingly innocent invitation that is actually a test. As they move across the floor, he makes conversation that probes her identity, her connections, her purpose for attending. Serena realizes with cold clarity that he suspects something, that her cover might be compromised, and that she must convince him otherwise through perfect performance. She channels every skill she developed as a waitress, reading people, giving them what they want to see, becoming invisible even while fully visible. She laughs at his jokes, asks intelligent questions about his business interests, plays the role of a slightly naive American so perfectly that he relaxes, dismissing her as harmless. But internally, she's cataloging every detail he reveals about the conspiracy's timeline, about which families have committed resources, about his own ambitions to reshape Seoul's underworld into something more professionally organized, more internationally connected. When the dance ends, Song Jae-sung kisses her hand with old-fashioned courtesy, never suspecting that the insignificant woman in his arms has just obtained the final pieces of intelligence needed to destroy him. Serena returns to her table, appearing composed while her heart races with adrenaline and fear. She's crossed another threshold. She's looked evil in the face and smiled at it, sacrificing another piece of her innocence for tactical advantage. The act builds toward its climax as the evening's program reaches its formal presentation. Yuna and Song Jae-sung taking the stage to announce their engagement officially, to thank the assembled guests for their support, to present the perfect image of Seoul's next power couple. Cameras focus on them, the live stream's viewership peaks, and Hyun-woo's team makes their move. The ballroom's massive screens suddenly display not the engagement announcement, but security footage from Aurora Club. Yuna's meeting with the Costa representatives, the discussion of payment terms for assassination, the involvement of Hyun-woo's head of security in the betrayal. The audio plays clearly through the ballroom sound system, Yuna's voice unmistakable as she discusses her fiancé's murder with clinical precision. The reaction is immediate chaos. Guests gasp, security teams reach for weapons, and the conspiracy's carefully constructed facade shatters in real time. But before violence can erupt, Hyun-woo himself walks onto the stage, very much alive, flanked by 50 armed operatives who have been positioned throughout the venue. His presence, calm, controlled, absolutely lethal, freezes everyone in place. The act concludes with Hyun-woo's ultimatum, delivered not with rage, but with the cold clarity of someone reclaiming stolen territory. You plotted my death in the name of progress. Let me show you what actual progress looks like. He presents evidence not just of Yuna's coercion, but of Song Jae-sung's long-term embezzlement, of the Costa family's attempts to take over Korean operations, of the Russian delegation's plans to trigger a gang war that would leave Seoul vulnerable to outside control. Every conspirator finds their secrets exposed, their leverage destroyed, their futures suddenly very uncertain. In the immediate aftermath of the ballroom revelation, as Hyun-woo's forces secure the venue and begin processing the conspirators. This isn't a massacre. Hyun-woo has evolved beyond his father's shoot-first governance style. Instead, it's a restructuring, brutal in its precision but surgical rather than chaotic. Those who acted from coercion receive mercy and opportunity for redemption. Those who acted from greed or ambition face justice that varies from exile to more permanent solutions. Serena watches this unfold with complex emotions. She's relieved that her plan worked, that her sister remains safe, that the immediate threat has been neutralized. But she's also confronted with the reality of what she's enabled. Hyun-woo consolidating power, eliminating rivals, reshaping Seoul's underworld according to his vision. Has she helped a better man triumph over worse alternatives? Or has she simply helped one monster defeat other monsters? The answer, she realizes, might be both simultaneously. The act provides resolution for key characters through small, meaningful scenes rather than exposition. Yuna is allowed to leave Seoul with her brother, provided she testifies against the Costa family's operations in Asia. Her departure is bittersweet. She meets with Serena privately, thanking her for revealing the impossible situation they'd shared. "We both tried to save the people we love," Yuna says. "The difference is you succeeded." It's a moment of feminine solidarity in a male-dominated world of violence, acknowledging that their opposition was never personal but strategic, forced by systems larger than either individual. Song Jae-sung faces harsher consequences, his embezzlement and betrayal earning permanent exile from Korea and blacklisting from every organization Hyun-woo influences. But even here, there's a lesson. Hyun-woo doesn't kill him, despite having every justification. He explains to Serena that his father would have ordered an execution without hesitation, would have made an example through violence. But fear only generates temporary loyalty, Hyun-woo says. "I'm building something that outlasts me, which means establishing principles that others can trust and follow." The narrative then moves forward 3 months, showing how the new order stabilizes. Hyun-woo implements reforms that his rivals had interpreted as weakness, moving legitimate assets into legal businesses, establishing strict rules against civilian casualties, creating transparent promotion systems based on merit rather than family connections. He's not abandoning organized crime, but attempting to professionalize it, to create structures that reduce arbitrary violence while maintaining profitability. Serena's role in this new empire becomes clear. She runs a consulting division that audits Hyun-woo's various operations for vulnerabilities, specifically focusing on how support staff and service workers might be exploited or become security risks. She completes her nursing degree and establishes a medical clinic that provides care to the families of organization members, recognizing that loyalty flows from protecting people's loved ones rather than threatening them. Her sister receives experimental treatment at a facility Hyun-woo's resources secured, making progress that was impossible before. The act explores the psychological aftermath of Serena's transformation. She hasn't emerged unscathed. She startles at sudden noises, maintains constant awareness of exits and threats, dreams about the violence she witnessed and participated in. But she's also discovered strengths she never knew she possessed. She's learned that empathy and strategic thinking aren't opposites but complementary forces, that protection sometimes requires preemptive action, that moral complexity doesn't mean moral relativism, but rather the recognition that righteousness doesn't guarantee rightness. Her relationship with Hyun-woo deepens into something neither can quite categorize. They're not conventionally romantic. The power imbalance and circumstantial origin of their connection create complications too significant to ignore. But they've developed profound trust, the kind that comes from surviving impossible situations together, from seeing each other at their worst and choosing continued partnership anyway. He values her perspective because she reminds him of the person he wanted to become before violence shaped him. She values his protection but also his willingness to evolve, to question the systems that made him even as he operates within them. The narrative's emotional climax arrives not through action, but through conversation. 6 months after the gala, Serena tells Hyun-woo she's considering whether to remain in his world or attempt to reclaim something closer to her original life. Her sister is recovering, the immediate threats have passed, and she could potentially rebuild away from organized crime. It's not that she wants to leave, but she needs to know the choice is genuinely hers rather than a consequence of circumstances that trapped her. Hyun-woo's response reveals his own transformation. Instead of using leverage or emotional manipulation, he simply says, "You saved my life twice, once with that note, and again by showing me that loyalty based on genuine respect is possible. Whatever you choose, your sister's treatment continues, your safety is guaranteed, and you'll always have resources to build whatever life you want." It's the first time in his existence he's released someone without strings attached. trusting that freely chosen loyalty is more valuable than coerced obligation. Serena's decision, when it comes, surprises even her. She chooses to stay, but on terms she defines. She'll continue her work but also pursue her nursing career, creating a life that integrates both aspects of her identity rather than forcing her to abandon one for the other. She establishes boundaries. She won't participate in violence directly. She won't compromise her ethical core. And she maintains the right to walk away if Hyun-woo's empire becomes something she cannot morally support. The story concludes 1 year after the initial warning note, with Serena overseeing the opening of her third medical clinic in Seoul's underserved neighborhoods. Hyun-woo attends the ceremony, his presence generating nervous whispers among the staff who recognize him. But Serena introduces him simply as a partner in ensuring community health, which is technically accurate if deliberately understated. As they stand together watching families receive care that was previously inaccessible, Hyun-woo asks, "Do you ever regret writing that note?" Serena considers the question seriously, acknowledging its weight. She's not the same person who served water in Aurora Club. She's seen and done things that would horrify her former self. She's compromised and adapted, and survived in ways that permanently altered her moral landscape. But she looks at her sister, healthy and laughing with the clinic's pediatric staff. She thinks about the service workers who now have someone advocating for their security concerns, the families receiving medical care through resources she helped secure, the marginal but real reforms making Seoul's underworld slightly less brutal than before. "No," she finally answers. "I don't regret it. Not because everything turned out perfectly, but because silence would have haunted me more than action ever could." The final image shows them walking together through Seoul's streets at twilight, the city's neon lights reflecting off rain-slicked pavement, neither fully in the light nor completely in darkness, exactly where their choices have placed them and where they've chosen to remain. The story ends with a lesson absorbed rather than stated. That courage means acting despite uncertainty, that loyalty must be earned through consistent behavior rather than demanded through power, that transformation is possible but never without cost, and that sometimes saving someone else's life requires the willingness to fundamentally change your own. Serena was just a waitress until she chose to be more, and that choice, terrifying, costly, irrevocable, became the moment she truly began living rather than merely surviving.